What's going on, hockey fans? This is episode 97 of the Clappercast. I'm Burke, and as always, joined by my co-host Sean. Sean, it's been an exciting week and a half, I guess, since we last recorded. How's it going today, man?
Not too bad. It's the fun season of the NHL season, I guess. The start of a new year when the contracts all tick over on free agency day. You got the draft, the expansion draft that we just had the last episode on. A lot of stuff to talk about. So there's been an active week, and we expect a lot of activity in the next couple of days. We're recording this on the 26th of July. Free agency's in 2 days. We expect a ton of activity in the near future here.
Yeah, the next few weeks should be pretty fun to. It's always fun to remember. Oh yeah, that guy went there, and this guy went there, and that's why they brought that guy in.
Yeah, and then you check out training camp rosters in a couple of months, and you're like, wait, when did that happen?
Yeah. When did that guy get on that team?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to love that as a kid, getting the new NHL game and being like, "What is with these rosters? Who are these guys?
Who put this person there?"
Team? Yeah. Coming off the draft, I got to be honest, I didn't watch the draft. I saw some videos about, some surprising moves and everything, and all I kind of heard from it was that it took forever for the draft to actually happen, that there's a bunch of timeouts and stuff, and it just took way too long.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a consequence of the remote drafts that they've had the past couple seasons. So they've got everyone there on Zoom calls, basically. But what ended up dragging out the first round anyways, I didn't watch the second to seventh rounds, but the first round was dragged out so much by the random necessity to have prospect interviews after the pick was clocked in. So there'd be a team on the clock. They'd submit their pick. They'd be ready to go. But the league is still having some random interview with some person that could wait until some other time. And then you have the commercial breaks every 2 picks, and it's just it drags it on so badly.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I know it's a huge day for a lot of those kids and everything, and obviously their families, but it's just come on, get it over with. Just announce the picks. Why does it have to take this long? But yeah, I guess unsurprisingly, Owen Power went first overall. I think that was kind of expected from most people.
That was the consensus number one. Yeah, was Owen Power. There were some that were kind of thinking they'd go off the board because apparently the Sabres really wanted Eklund. But you've got the first overall pick. You don't draft for need. You draft the best player available. They got to take Owen Power. He's the consensus number one.
Yeah, and his comparable is Victor Hedman. So if they can get him in sooner rather than later, they you got to think that they're dreaming of a Darlene Power,
right? That would be
tandem.
That'd be an insane defensive pairing if they both
2 number 1 overall defensemen playing together. Yeah. Yeah, so and then there were some rumors that they might have been trading that pick too.
I'm sure they fielded.
Ultimately, they hung on to it.
I'm sure they fielded some talks, but I don't think there was really anything ever serious. They seemed pretty high on the value of that pick for themselves rather than trading it.
Yeah, unless it was Seattle wanting it and they got the number 2 pick, so they could still kind of get somebody super valuable. There's no way that they were going to get rid of that.
And on that note, for Seattle, they get their potential number 1 center in Matty Beniers. So that's an amazing pickup for them. It's really gonna. I imagine, to be honest, that they're probably gonna get him into the NHL lineup ASAP. There's a very good chance he's there this season because they have 0 center depth. And he's immediately going to be thrust into a number 1, number 2 center spot. So, there's someone that they can market around a little bit in the new city.
Yeah, you got to think that this kind of played into their plans for the expansion draft a bit too. And just touching on that, I've seen a lot of, professional and amateur commentary about the expansion draft and just being well, you got to give it time. This isn't the roster that they're going to ice on opening day, but it's well, what me and you talked about last episode is yeah, but they could have put themselves in a better situation by picking other people still. So, and they're they got a lot of cap space, so what they're going to do? And it's well, still, they could have picked up a lot of tradable people. So
us amateur armchair GMs can also attest to the fact that a lot of cap space heading into free agency isn't necessarily a good thing. Sure, you can fill out your roster, but it's no secret that you're overpaying for everything in free agency.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It's you've got the space. Players are gonna be like, well, are you gonna nickel and dime me here, or are you gonna give me a good contract on my end? So yeah, I mean that's a good point too. So yeah, I mean I agree with you. I think that old Matty boy here is probably gonna get into the show pretty quick, based on what it looks like right now for Seattle. So that's cool. And then the Ducks kind of went, I don't know,
Tiny bit.
a bit of a stretch
Yeah,
here.
so here's the overall theme of this draft, like first, second, all the rounds, was players being taken well above where their rankings were. We kind of expected it given the pandemic impacting the ability to scout players, the amount of games that junior players are playing, and we kind of expected to see a lot of players jumping around, being taken well above where they're ranked or well below even. And like you just said, the first one that kind of jumped up a little bit was Mason McTavish heading to the Ducks at number 3. He's generally ranked as a top 10 guy, don't get us wrong on that. But we're looking more around between 5 to 10, not top 3.
Yeah, and I think that just is because he's a center.
Yeah.
I think, it's how often do we see centermen and defensemen go above where they're pegged to be because a team wants that position.
Yeah, and that's
because they're so valuable.
That's such an important one. I mean, Anaheim's, kind of in the middle of a rebuild here. They're really trying to fill out the prospect pool. What a better, situation than to get a center, a legit center who can hopefully develop and be your number one guy. It's going to be a lot more valuable than a winger. They don't particularly need defense in the immediate moment. And I mean, the best one on the board already got taken, so you're gonna want that center over a winger.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then next up was New Jersey with the first of seemed like a shit ton of these things happening this year, where they drafted Luke Hughes. Obviously, they chose Jack Hughes. I guess 2 years ago now, first overall. And so they got his brother. So there's a nice, cool moment of all of the Hughes brothers celebrating, and now they're on the same team. And I mean, some of the rankings had him actually 4th or 5th, so it wasn't too much of a stretch by those ones. But there was other ones that had him down at a number 11. So I think this is a win for them, though. I mean, it looks great.
He's a good enough prospect that they can risk reaching a little bit for him because of the good PR of getting 2 of the 3 Hughes brothers back united together on one team. Obviously now Quinn's kind of looking over from Vancouver, how do I get over there? But
yeah, I'm an RFA.
From a PR perspective, it's totally worth it to get these two guys on the same team immediately.
Yeah. And then after that, Columbus with one of their 3 first round picks here.
Columbus had a killer weekend.
Kent Johnson. And so this one he bumped up a bit, but again it's because he's a center, and I think he was the next highest rated center on most rankings. And so they got their guy, I think, with this pick. They must have wanted him, and then they picked him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the was the pattern for a lot of this draft. Is guys moved up and down, and just because they wanted him.
Yeah, the interesting one with Johnson for me is that even fairly recently I had seen him as high as going top 3 in some rankings, but some like McKean's I'm looking at right now has him down at 22nd or something.
I think I'm looking 15.
Yeah, the
9, 10, 15 around there. So
I mean, but again, it's that thing we were just talking about. You get your center, and you kind of see the trend looking down from the next 7 or 8 picks here, where it's a lot of wingers and defenders. So these teams value these centers really, really highly. They need them. And I mean, obviously, Columbus from a position of need, they don't really have a great center option at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And then after this, the Detroit Red Wings with the 6th overall picked Simon Edvinsson, so defenseman. Some of the rankings had him as high as 3rd. And so I think this could be a sneaky pick
Yeah.
for Yzerman again. I mean, like his Moritz Seider pick got kind of criticized a bit, but he's been on the money so far. Yeah. So I kind of like this one for them, and see if they can get another good defenseman in there.
This seems like a good strategic pick as well. It's like they're obviously in the very early stages of their complete rebuild overhaul of that franchise, but now they're going to have, hopefully 2 very high-end defensive prospects already developing. We'll talk about Sebastian Costa later, who they traded up to pick up later in the first round. But they're getting the prospects that take the longest to develop in the system already. And then the next couple of years, where they're still going to be a little bit mediocre, they're going to be able to fill up with forwards.
Yeah. And then kind of the story of the top 10, I think, here is William Eklund fell to the Sharks at number 7 overall. I mean, he was kind of pegged to go 2 or 3. And I think this is just because he's a winger. And so he fell. And the Sharks got to be super happy to pick him up at 7th.
Yeah. And the thing, too, is like you look at the picks after the top 3. Because, I mean, Buffalo, Seattle, Anaheim, they could have all gone for them. Gone for Eklund. But number 4, was there really ever any question that the Devils were going to take anyone but Luke Hughes? Number 5, the Blue Jackets needed a center. Number 6, the Red Wings wanted a defender. They're not going to take Eklund, so ultimately he falls through no fault of his own. He just falls by virtue of what other teams needed.
Yeah, none of these teams were really going for like best player available. It was like, what do we want?
Yeah,
position wise,
which is an interesting strategy, because usually top 5 at least, sometimes top 10 even, is best player available.
Yeah, for sure. And then LA adding to their great prospect pool here, Brant Clark, defenseman. Again, he kind of fell a bit in some rankings, but kind of right in line with where he probably was expected to go. And same really for Arizona's pick too, with Dylan Guenther, another winger. But then Ottawa kind of surprised everybody.
Yeah, here's the someone who reach. So this is
someone pegged to go out of the first. Basically,
yeah, I think this guy was ranked in I think he was kind of in the 30s in some, but as far down as 50 in other rankings. At number 10, they take Tyler Boucher. So this is either some galaxy brain stuff from Dorian and Pierre Maguire, or they really, really like this guy and didn't think that it was apparently worth it to trade down for him. Like, why would you trade that 10th pick down to mid-20s or something and get another second or third out of it?
Yeah, I mean, they could have got him in the second round.
Yeah, unless they had really good intel that Columbus or Calgary at 12 and 13 wanted him.
Yeah, I don't know. It was definitely weird. I guess the only other one that I kind of wanted to mention in the rest of the first round here after the top 10 was number 11. The fact that Columbus got that pick in the trade to get Seth Jones, which we'll talk about later.
I think you're missing something here. Number 11 was actually the sneaky best pick of the draft. Forfeited pick.
Oh, yeah?
Forfeited pick is now the Coyotes' top prospect.
Yes,
right up there
course.
With future considerations.
Yes. How could I miss that? Yeah. Oh, and that, I mean, to mention it too, that number 9 pick was originally a Canucks pick that Arizona got. And so, they were probably pretty desperate to get a pick in the top 10. And so they got one because they really didn't have a lot of picks.
No.
And so for them to get that was pretty clutch. I saw actually some Canucks fans were kind of a bit relieved that they picked Dylan Guenther. And so they're more okay with the trade now. We'll talk about it later, but that might be a good one to keep an eye on. Is just Canucks could have had that guy, or anybody after that. So
yeah, there's a lot of people calling Guenther another one of those guys that dropped. He's got top 5 talent, so he could be a really good offensive player down in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean the Canucks aren't starved for offensive prospects, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But number 11 was another Columbus pick. Where they got Cole Sillinger, Mike Sillinger's kid, I think. And so it's interesting that I saw a joke on one of the hockey guys' videos, and it was following in his dad's footsteps of getting traded before he's actually even in the league. And And so, yeah, I mean, another big center, or I don't know if he's big, but another center for Columbus. And so they really went, hard on the centers. In the, top 11, they had 2. So that's pretty cool for them. Something for their fans to be excited about, because I think they made out really well with that trade. So yeah, I mean, that's really everything that I wanted to mention. Is there any other picks in the top 10 that you wanted to specifically mention or discuss?
Yeah, I got a few more throughout the first round anyways that I'd want to just talk a little bit about. Jump a bit down to Sebastian Cossa, taken at 15 by Detroit. Now, Detroit actually traded up to get this one. They were originally going to pick again at 23rd. This was Dallas's pick. They swapped and gave up a couple extra picks to trade up to take this goalie. So, like I said before, Detroit is filling up their prospect pool with the ones that take the longest to develop. They're kind of getting ready to bring everyone into the NHL at a similar time. So they're just going to go from like 0 to 100 in 2 seasons in 3 or 4 years down the road once these guys develop. So Sebastian Cossa he was an amazing goalie with the Oil Kings down in the WHL. Put up a dominating season. He's like 6'6", blocks the whole net. Just an outstanding goalie prospect. So, they just traded for Nedeljkovic to get them through the next few years, and now they've got Sebastian Cossa in the pipeline to help out with that. St. Louis.
Yeah, what a trade that was too. We'll talk about it later, but oh my god.
Yeah, St. Louis at number 17 went for Zachary Bolduc. It was kind of a weird pick for them because he wasn't really pegged as to get taken where he was. It was kind of another one of those where like St. Louis is in a position where they can just draft to exactly what they need. They saw something in Zachary Bolduc that they liked, and they reached for him to get exactly what they need, the type of player that they need to fill that hole. Winnipeg at number 18 took Chaz Lucius. Just special shout out to him.
Is all name team there or what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Chaz.
And here's one to piss me off as an Oilers fan. Jesper Wallstedt, the top goalie prospect in the draft, dropped all the way down to number 20. Edmonton has a chance to get a top goalie prospect, someone, the most highly regarded one since Andrei Vasilevsky. But nope, they trade down 2 picks to 22 and swap with Minnesota, so Minnesota takes him instead. Just seems like another one of those moves where every single time that they can make a decision this offseason, Edmonton is making what appears to be the wrong one or a bad one. Obviously, when a guy drops that far, because this guy was pegged to go top 10, when someone drops that far, you start wondering, okay, is there something that we armchair GMs do not see, like something character-related, maturity-related in the interviews? But
I think it's just goalie, man.
It very well could be.
Yeah, I mean, it comes up like every draft where like teams are super reluctant to pick a goalie, like in the first round even. So. Yeah. I mean, it was surprising to see him to not get picked early, but
I was getting
to Minnesota
so excited. I was getting so excited when he kept dropping and dropping and dropping, and then he gets to a point where, the Rangers didn't take, where it was like Costa got taken, and then the next picks, it's like New York Rangers. Well, they've got Shesterkin. St. Louis Blues. Well, they've got Binnington. Winnipeg Jets. Well, they've got Hellebuck. Nashville, they just got Askarov. And suddenly, Wallstedt can drop all the way to the Oilers. Sure enough, he does. And then I'm sitting there waiting for 3 minutes as they're struggling to make this pick, and then suddenly you realize, oh, they're trading it, aren't they?
Yeah, that's too bad. I mean, great for Minnesota though. They've got some good goalies in the pipeline.
I mean, between Wallstedt and Hunter Jones, one of those two absolutely is gonna be an NHL superstar probably. Not to mention they already have Kokkonen on the roster, so they are set in net.
Yeah.
The last
get richer.
Yeah, no doubt. The last pick of significance that I wanted to bring up for the first round is the Montreal Canadiens doing an absolute boneheaded, moronic decision drafting Logan Mailloux 31st overall. The guy who, for those who aren't aware, he was charged and fined in Sweden for just taking and distributing images of a sexual encounter he had with a woman without her consent. So he's been charged and fined with that. The scandal it started to gain traction and, with news outlets and stuff. And then he was like, don't draft me this year, basically put out a statement, renouncing himself from the draft. Can't actually do that with the NHL draft. So turns out Marc Bergevin decided to draft him anyways.
Yeah, in its first round, like,
yeah.
I mean, like, and like in his like statement, Logan Mailloux, when he like said like don't draft me, he was like, I need to work on like some personal things and like maturity, like don't draft me.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, yeah. I remember there's a victim involved here, and then like we're proud to select,
Oh God.
And it's like, well, if you wanted to draft this guy, you could have probably just signed him for free, like down the road.
Well, see, there's the
like,
other issue is that other teams were going to take him in the second round. That's why Marc Bergevin went with the first round pick.
Yeah,
so
I don't get it. There's somebody else you could have taken that.
They could have drafted me, and it would have been a better pick.
I mean, the very next pick was another defenseman pegged to go later. But,
yeah,
like there's somebody else you could have picked up to avoid the whole situation.
Yeah.
So,
and
I mean, why does this got to happen every year where there's some guy who gets drafted that has some shitty thing that they've done in the past? That, I mean, at least this guy, like, I barely know the story, but at least this guy was like, hey, you know what? I got to work on myself. Don't draft me. It wasn't like that fuckface that got drafted by Arizona that was like, yeah, I'm never apologizing for what I did, basically, right? So it's like,
yeah,
at least this is like no comment on like what happened, but like at least this kid is like, has the mental acumen to be like, yeah, don't.
I sort of see some holes in that. So in the lead up when when he's interviewing with teams and talking to them and stuff, if you really don't want to be drafted, you tell the team that's going to draft you, I'm not going to sign with you. You say stuff like that.
I mean, he still couldn't. He still might not.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. That maybe that was said behind closed doors, and Montreal just did it anyways. But you tell them you're not going to sign with them. You do stuff like that, but they still draft you.
Yeah, I mean, they can trade his rights.
Yeah,
I guess. So they can still get something, but yeah,
and,
I mean, I mean, when the heat gets put to his feet, like, yeah, he comes out and says, well, "I'm sorry," whatever.
It doesn't really, yeah, and he ends up. But two more things, about him and his statements, about Logan and his statements. Someone asked him like, "Oh, do you have any plans? Like, how do you work on this?" And he was like, "I don't really have any idea. I'm in therapy." It's like, you can't come up with anything, like any sort of, weight.
Well, he's what, like an 18, 17-year-old kid? I mean, yeah.
Like there's so many things just off the top of your head, like advocating for victim services and, spending time volunteering for community stuff and, showing that you care, that you realize you've done something wrong and helping the people that have been hurt in a similar way to what you did to somebody else. And he's like,
I'm not making the comments on his ethical anything, but like at the end of the day, he's a minor, and I did nothing like that when I was that kid's age, but like, I was a stupid kid too, and someone asked me point blank, something like that, I might not have responded well either, so I kind of see that side of it too. But yeah, I mean, it just overall, it's a really bad situation to put yourself in as for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah,
like,
and
why pick him?
Why pick him?
All I'm trying to say is that like, at least him or his agent or whatever was like, you need to like make a video or make a statement and like apologize and take yourself out of the draft. That's not what the kid from Arizona or that got drafted by Arizona did at all. So that's all I'm saying is that there was at least they did that. I'm not saying that that's all that they need to do, but it's just like, at least they made some sort of attempt to be like, I need to work on myself, whatever that is. Don't draft me. And then it's a really bad look for Bergevin to be like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to draft you anyway.
Like, yep, you're my guy.
Because you're talented. Yeah.
And see, it's so much worse that Bergevin himself is currently in the middle of the sexual abuse cover up in Chicago, where he's just like, oh yeah, I wasn't aware of any of that. Okay, you were there, and apparently everyone else in the organization knew. How did you stay out of it? And then in the middle of this, he goes and drafts this kid. The team had a pre-prepared PR statement to send out on social media after the draft. Like immediately after. It's like if you have to make one of those to have it ready immediately after, you've probably made the wrong pick.
Yeah. Yeah, like we had to have a disclaimer announcement as part of our draft pick choice. Yeah. And it's like also it's like we had the forethought to realize that there would be a shitstorm because of this, but we made it anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, couldn't you have just chosen somebody else? Like, there's lots of other people available. Why not just pick somebody else? When you're like a late first round pick. Like you're practically a second round pick.
Exactly.
Why don't you just pick somebody else? Let Arizona pick them. They'll probably do it. Just let them own that. They're the draft specialists. They probably put them through their own combine. Why don't you let them pick that up?
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to read, because I kind of like this quote from Bob McKenzie here, replying to the Habs PR statement after the pick. So this is Bob McKenzie tweeting final line of statement, and this is directly from the statement that the Habs put out. We are committed to raising awareness among our players about the repercussions of their actions on the lives of others. And Bob McKenzie adding, this will be met with scorn and disbelief because from a hockey perspective, he faced no real repercussions. He's still a first rounder. That the only real victim in this situation is the teenage woman who actually experienced the repercussions through no fault of her own. It's like, may you face no consequences for his actions. He's still getting picked in the first round of the NHL draft in his first year of eligibility. Despite what he's done, despite the fact that he is now entering an even more public-facing role where he's going to be looked at as a role model from hockey fans, from kids, from young Habs fans, that the organization is basically saying, yeah, that's okay. Everything he did is okay, even though he hasn't even begun to make amends for it all. That it's okay. And it's just a greater issue within the hockey culture, hockey world, with hockey men, that they're just basically saying this is fine.
Yeah, and I think that's just has been a part of the culture, is just talking about girls you banged and pictures, and
it's that locker room talk,
weird stuff like that.
Barstool locker room talk garbage that people are starting to finally become disgusted with.
Well, I don't even think it's that. I think it's just that there's more and more different types of hockey fans, and people take issue with that as the game is growing. And just, even the hockey teams I've played on, that's a part of it. It's just talking a certain way and acting like that. And so I think it's not the fact that the hockey, traditional hockey minds are changing. I think it's just that the game is expanding and there's other fans coming in, and we want to make it enjoyable for everybody. And so it's just so weird that that sort of stuff is seen as okay by a lot of traditional hockey minds. And you brought up Bergevin was in that Chicago thing, and we haven't talked about that at all on the podcast yet, but if you're not following that story, it's wild.
Yeah, please do. Rick Westhead and Katie Strang are doing amazing investigative reporting and just kind of being the beacons of information in this whole scandal.
Yeah, it's that's the mindset, right? It's that's the traditional hockey mindset of it's not a big deal, just don't talk about it, don't bring it up, focus on playing, whatever. And it's if you read some of that stuff, it's what the fuck is going on? It's just crazy. And then the fact that everybody knew about it and is just denying it. Anyway, yeah, it's just that's the sort of culture. And you've got all these GMs who were in their 70s or late 50s or 60s or whatever, and that's what they did. That's the world that they came up in. And so they don't they're not taking a modern approach to handling situations like that. They're just like, oh, that's hockey, guys.
Yeah, they're just doing that
that's
whole
what I
boy.
did when I was a rookie or whatever.
They're just doing the whole
boys
boys will be boys thing, not really realizing
Yeah,
that they might be acting in an incredibly inappropriate manner in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and it wasn't that long ago that there was huge like hazing scandals and stuff in like junior hockey. And,
yeah, that was within the last decade too,
so.
and I'm sure it still happens. To be honest, like there's no way they've gotten that sapped out of the culture already.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's just it's unfortunate that you're right. I mean, there's zero repercussions. There might have been like a private settlement or I don't know, something like that. But to not get out in front of that as for Logan to like you said, be like, this is what I'm doing. I'm taking a proactive approach to making sure that this sort of stuff doesn't happen again. And then like the Habs had a proactive defense for drafting him, but there's no like, because we're making this pick, we're gonna like set up a whatever. It's like, I don't know. It's just like their PR team must be just.
I imagine there are a lot of employees
now
with that organization, with the Habs and whatever, if they have like a corporation controlling them. I imagine there's a lot of employees that are pissed off.
Labatt.
Yeah. Like there has to be a lot. I mean, you've got so many people that would see that, and it's like, I don't want to represent. Like this doesn't represent me. I don't want this.
Well, let's not forget hockey is for everyone when you're talking about July or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like that's. I mean, the Habs probably had a whole bunch of shit about that, where it's like, they changed the profile picture, they changed the Instagram picture, whatever, and then. Something like this comes up and it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, hockey's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Hockey's just for, some white kid that did something fucked up and we don't care because he's good at hockey.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
It's like, how about instead of just changing the profile and just, saying the right things, how about you do something?
Yeah.
And, you show who you really are through your actions and you still drafted him. So, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of Habs fans and, probably a lot of female Habs fans that are like, what the fuck? And they should feel that way. It's brutal. It's really, really bizarre. And so between this and the Chicago thing that's been going on, it's really
it's a hard month to be a hockey fan and an NHL fan.
Well, and it's just the fact that these are separated by. I mean, and the like. I'm not comparing these two issues at all, but. The fact that these are separated by 11 years and there's still this sort of through line of
the same mentality.
Yeah, it shows that despite the NHL trying to grow and welcome and diversity, that there's still that part of traditional hockey culture that hasn't gone away. So I mean, a nice segue here, but nice light topic there. But getting back to the draft, outside of that 31st pick, is there anything else about the draft that you wanted to mention at all, or should we start getting into some of these monster trades? That
last pick that I wanted to mention was Atu Ratti. So this guy, as recently as like 1 or 2 years ago, he's basically projected as a potential number 1 in this draft. He ended up dropping all the way to 52 this year because he had a really bad season. So I did a little bit of looking into it, and it sounds like he kind of peaked sometime around when he became a World Junior star, because he had a bit of a breaking out in the World Juniors a couple years back, and sometime after that he kind of like burned out. It sounds like where he lost like it became more routine for him than playing for passion, for the love of the game or whatever. He kind of burned out on all the games, all the practicing, like just everything going on, and it really took a toll on his ability to play the game. Now, I'm not quite sure about his actual skill sets. If there's more reasons, I think maybe he wasn't the greatest skater or something that kind of took a toll on it as well. But it was just interesting because this guy was so highly ranked for years heading into this draft, and then over the last calendar year he just kept falling and falling and falling.
Yeah, and I think that kind of relates to some things that we've been talking about over the last year, is just the fact that this draft is going to be so messed up because there's, interrupted seasons and people are getting sick and, like their conditioning has suffered or, they this, that, or the other thing. And I think that's probably the biggest example of that is like someone who was on pace to be, number one, top five, whatever pick. And, there's a lot going on. And I think that's fair to acknowledge. And I think at the end of the day, someone might have got a super sneaky, pick out of it. Because, once he gets back onto his game, he could get back to that level or that trajectory. And so there's probably a lot of kids that got drafted in this that were in a similar position where, a year or two ago, it looked like they were going to be one place, and then they've had to deal with canceled seasons or very limited ice time, and so their development gets a little bit put on pause. And they could pick right back up once they get back into it. So I think there's probably going to be a lot of positive storylines out of this draft. It's just the fact that this was really a crapshoot if there ever was one in a draft. So that's a good one to point out because I remember hearing the hype about him and then really really trailed off. So we'll see.
Yeah, so that's
but
that's all I had for the draft itself. But also over the last week here, we had a ton of player movement after the expansion draft, even of some major names, a couple of really big trades. So we're gonna jump back here to the 17th. So there was one significant trade here, a 3-way trade with the Flyers, the Predators, and the Golden Knights that had some big names moving. So in this trade, we have the Philadelphia Flyers acquiring Ryan Ellis, the Nashville Predators acquiring Philippe Myers and Nolan Patrick. Then immediately with that, the Predators sent Nolan Patrick to the Golden Knights for Cody Glass.
Yeah, I think it came out, it was rumored that Patrick wanted a trade out of Philadelphia. I think they did well to bring in Ellis. I think he'll be kind of a type of defenseman that they kind of missed. Where they had Gostisbehere.
I feel like
I think we'll mention him.
I feel like Ellis is what Gostisbehere was supposed to be.
You mean he can actually play defense?
Yeah,
and he's got a shot. Yeah,
Gostisbehere was good for a couple years, and we'll end up talking about him later because that's another one of the trades. But Gostisbehere had those good couple of years, and then I think he got hurt or something, and he never really bounced back in the way they wanted him to, or developed in the way they wanted him to. And Ellis seems to be more the type that was what they wanted Gostisbehere to be for them.
Yeah, and it kind of looked like the Knights were done with Cody Glass too, and I think Nolan Patrick can really kind of play their kind of game. So I kind of like this trade for every team, and Nashville also gets Philippe Myers, who's a good depth D-man, and with Ellis going out, they're obviously going to need somebody there. So. I kind of like this one all the way around. I was really liking what Philly's been doing, but later on, they've been giving up a lot for what they're doing.
They gave up a lot to basically acquire Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah. So jumping forward. There's definitely a bunch of cap dump trades.
There's an interesting trend this offseason so far with the new type of cap dump trade that is literally Team A sending their overpaid bad contract plus a bunch of draft picks to Arizona specifically in return for nothing, which is interesting. I mean, it's nothing. It's future considerations to make it a legal trade, but it really is just nothing. They're not going to get anything back.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting trend that you haven't seen that specific type of blatant cap dump trade.
And it's nice to see that news outlets being open about it. That it's this, there's nothing going the other way.
Yeah, some of the official TSN graphics are just nothing in return.
Yeah, the Islanders sent Andrew Ladd and a few picks to the Coyotes and it's nothing. So that's the first time I've ever seen that where it's like doesn't even say future considerations, just nothing.
Yeah.
And then I mean, while we're on the topic, I mean, the Philadelphia did that with Shane Gostisbehere, and they a second and a seventh to Arizona. And so yeah, Arizona taking on a bunch of bad contracts and getting picks out of it because, you know, one of the write up I did for their preseason was that, you know, they kind of fucked themselves over by not having any picks basically, and that whole draft combine thing, losing their first. So they've been really starved for that, and so, you know, just admitting where they're at, taking these on and getting something is smart for them. And for Philly, it sucks because obviously they probably were trying to trade Gostisbehere and they couldn't get anything for him, and they needed to make some room for what they wanted to do, and so they gave up a lot.
And I'm going to skip ahead a couple of trades here because this one I feel is quite linked, where the Flyers acquired Rasmus Ristolainen, from Buffalo in exchange for Robert Hagg, the 14th overall pick, Isaac Rosen, and 2023 second. So in my view right here, they basically traded Shane Gostisbehere, 2021 first, a 2022 or two 2022 seconds, if I'm reading it right. And, oh wait, how am I doing this? 2022 second, a 2023 second, and a 2022 seventh for Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah, and Philippe Myers and Nolan Patrick, and throw in Ryan Ellis going the other way.
Yeah.
So they lost. I think Myers and Hagg are good defensemen, like bottom.
Hagg is solid. Myers hasn't really progressed, but he's like a kind of okay bottom pairing guy.
Yeah. And so they bring in Ristolainen and Ellis, the only guys coming back. So like they're both good, but that's a lot to give up.
Yeah, it's all those draft picks that's going to come back to haunt Philly over the next few years because they're going to have a completely barren prospect pool.
They're going all in. Like they are going for it, and you know they have that good year, bad year, good year, bad year pattern. So this year,
if they're going to go all in, it's got to be this year because that's their pattern.
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean it's finally happened. Ristolainen left Buffalo finally
after 27,000 years.
Over.
after being on the trade block longer than Jaromir Jagr's played hockey.
And then he's going to Philly. So we'll see how that turns out for him. But I bet he's probably pretty pumped to be out of Buffalo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and just because there's another Philly trade, we might as well mention it now. 1-for-1, they traded with Columbus. They traded out Jacob Voracek in exchange for Cam Atkinson. I love this one for Philly.
I think, yeah, I mean, Voracek, I think it kind of worn out his welcome in Philly. I think the organization was kind of unimpressed with his performance the last couple seasons, and needed to send him on his way for a fresh start. And in return, they get Cam Atkinson, who's going to be a great glue guy for those middle line forwards, possibly even the top line if they have, depending how they structure their lineup. You know, Atkinson is extremely beloved by Blue Jackets fans. He's a solid player. I think he had a 40-goal year within the last couple seasons. So he's going to be a great addition for that forward group and be. I think he's more of a goal scorer, obviously with a lot of goals that one season, than Voracek. So it'll be, a swap where Voracek's more of a playmaker. It'll be nice to get Atkinson in there for them, who's more of a scorer.
Yeah, I like this one for Philly because they save on cap too. They save like $2.3 million per season. And I don't really understand this one for Columbus to get Voracek and his bad contract.
I see this entire offseason for them as just getting a new mentality into the team's identity. Where I'm looking at their moves, like to bring in Adam Boqvist, to bring in Jake Bean, to bring in Jakub Voracek, to go hard on centers in the draft. I think it's all part of this mentality to just shift away from what John Tortorella was doing and to bring in a more offensive mindset. They're bringing in Voracek, who's a playmaker, to try and possibly help retain Patrick Laine, who's a scorer. Just to build some more offensive potential there to help support the offensive stars that you have. I think they're just trying to get a new mindset in the organization right now. And also they're familiar with Voracek. They drafted him. He played there for a few seasons a decade ago.
Yeah, I just don't understand taking on that cap. But yeah, I mean, I get it. The the next trade I wanted to kind of talk about is Detroit Red Wings got Alex Nedeljkovic from Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for Jonathan Bernier and a 2021 third-round pick. So both goalies were needing new contracts, but I don't see there's any other way to see this trade except as an absolute steal.
Yeah, and the thing is,
Detroit Red Wings.
Nedeljkovic has already signed in Detroit for 2 years at $3 million per season.
Wow, what a absurd contract!
And yeah, Carolina has just lost the guy who was being groomed as their goalie of the future for years. Like, he finally had his
Calder,
breakout year last year. His Calder contending,
not Calder votes.
Calder contending breakout year, and he wants $3 million a year. I think 3 or 3.5 from Carolina, and they were prepared to offer him 1.5. And so they dump him for absolutely nothing. Like, how did Detroit get him for this little?
Well, Steve Yzerman was basically asked that point blank, and he said, well, you're going to have to ask Carolina that.
Yeah. So to me, that's like, he doesn't really know, but it worked. Like, he probably just went in like super low thinking he'd give up a second or a better goalie or a prospect or something, and Carolina's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, what?
Grab him and run, yeah. And, yeah, so, I mean, you see this before, like, where goalies come in, they have a hot, like, season or whatever, and then teams are kind of, some teams are a bit more hesitant to bank on that and see, like, this is what you're going to do moving forward. And I guess Carolina was just not sold on it, which is dumb because I think he's the better goalie that they have.
See, and the thing, too, is he wasn't even being unreasonable about it. I think he wanted like a $3.5 million per season cap hit.
Yeah, and it's like, give me a bridge deal.
Yeah, like that's not
fine.
That's not unreasonable. It's not like he's asking for a Binnington contract.
Yeah, and so they weren't willing to do that, and Detroit was like, all right.
I think it's just the weird
and
spending habits of Tom Dundon in Carolina.
And apparently they didn't talk to Bernier about signing, like,
at all
in Carolina. Yeah, so they just got him, and so we'll see if there's a deal.
To add on to this,
he could just not sign there.
Yeah, exactly. To add on to this,
he had a good year. Like, he did have a good year in Detroit. You got to give him that. But, like, for them to go from Nedeljkovic and Mrazek and Reimer to Mrazek and Bernier, both of those guys aren't signed, so it's like...
So, Mrazek, too, is apparently going to test free agency. That's what I'm going to add that. Mrazek is wanting to test free agency, too. So, like, what's Carolina going to have? Reimer, David Ayers starting in net next year?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's like... How much were we harping on them last season because they didn't get a goalie, right?
Exactly.
And now they lose the best goalie prospect that they've had probably ever.
Yeah, I'm not sure how highly regarded Cam Ward was when he was breaking into the league, but
no, I think he played in the finals and won the cup in like his second season or something, and then was there forever. So they probably never drafted goalies. And then Nedeljkovic could peter off. He could, but I don't think he will. He's a bit of an older, made a bit of an older intro to the league, and so I think it wasn't a flash in the pan. And plus, he was not playing very much. Like, they would. Maybe it was a fact that Brindamore didn't like him because, like, I saw Brindamore never playing him because I had Nedeljkovic on my fantasy team, and he would go like 4 games between starts, and then he would just like have a shutout. And then they go like another like 5 games or something, and then you get another shutout. And it's like, just play that guy,
right?
Like, clearly he's the guy. And so yeah, I mean, I love this for their Wings. I mean, Yzerman clearly knows what he's doing, and so this is a great one for them.
Totally.
I really don't understand it from the Hurricanes. So weird, very weird. I guess anyway, moving on. St. Louis Blues acquired Pavel Buchnevich from the New York Rangers for Sammy Blais and a 2022 second-round pick.
I hate this trade for the Rangers.
Me too.
I think this is one of those James Dolan moves. to toughen up the team because he's so worried about that. Whereas, you've just given up. Buchnevich is a pretty proven scorer. He's well loved by the locker room. Like, I think Panarin and at least a couple other guys were like vocally frustrated that they traded
probably
Pavel.
Yeah.
And in return they get someone, Sammy Blais, who he's a decent like depth forward, but he plays like half the games of a season. He never really developed much of a scoring touch, and he's mostly just a physical presence. You get a second out of it as well, but that doesn't seem like much for someone like Buchnevich, who seems like he's on the verge of breaking out into being another tier of scorer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on the other side, I love this trade for St. Louis.
Totally.
Get Buchnevich, a scorer. They might be shopping Tarasenko. They might be, Hoffman. I think they got to deal with him as well. So I love this one for them. Give up basically nothing for top six forward.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's signing rights, so I guess that does impact the value in return a little bit because there's no guarantee he's going to sign there. But that also says that the Rangers weren't going to sign him, or they didn't want to sign him anyways, to me. So if they give him up for this little.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this is a good scoop up by the Blues. And the Rangers, I think they were going in the right direction, and now they're not.
They were on track to have one of the fastest rebuilds of the last 20 years or so. And I think that change in GM, the ownership intervention, is going to set them back a little bit.
Yeah. All right, well, next up we've got one of the big D-men trades. Vancouver Canucks acquired Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland, who is an RFA, from the Arizona Coyotes in exchange for Antoine Roussel, Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson, that number 9 overall pick in this year's draft, a 2022 second, and a 2023 seventh. And Ekman-Larsson had, I think, 12%.
12% retained,
so like 1 point something or something like that.
990,000.
Yeah. All right, well, close to 1.
Pretty close. Pretty close.
And he signed for a number of years still at like 8 point something per season. So this one, the kind of the picks kept coming in for this one. I think this one goes back to like last year.
It does.
Where there was Ekman-Larsson said, "I'll go to Vancouver, I'll go to Boston, but you got to trade me by like this date, and if it doesn't happen, I'll stay." And he stayed. But so I think he wants to be in Vancouver. He said he wants to be there. Apparently, he's friends with the Sedins. He played against the Sedins in their last home game ever in Vancouver, and there's a cool photo of them like hugging and stuff. And I think he just like. I watched his press availability about this trade, and he was talking about like basically getting his passion for the game back, and wanting to play better and wanting to be in like a good group of guys and stuff. So I think he he's been falling off the last couple of years, and I think that probably just speaks to it. Is just like he lost like the passion.
Yeah, he just. Arizona hasn't been an easy situation to be in the last few seasons here. But Connor Garland kind of alluded to just how difficult the situation was and kind of maybe a lack of communication with players and just mixed messages all over the organization down in Arizona. So it could really take a toll on Ekman-Larsson's, desire and passion and, just a fresh start in a different organization with some guys that he's close with, if he's close with the Sedins, just to help reinvigorate himself and find new life for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, like his mom died like a few years ago, and like the teams just sucked, and there's been all of these like huge issues, the change of ownership, like general manager just like abandoning ship, coaches coming in and leaving. So it's like, yeah, it's probably not a huge positive environment to be in. And so I could see him wanting out of there. And, he's team captain, so there's a lot of pressure on him. coming into Vancouver. There's a lot of young people who are, exciting, and lots of Swedes, a lot of Swedish, stars that have been associated with the Vancouver Canucks. And so, I think that side of it, I think is should be positive for him. And I don't know. I think he should probably return to form a bit, but I think this trade is hard to evaluate because it's essentially the Canucks giving up their immediate cap worries in, Roussel, Beagle, and Eriksson in exchange for potentially future cap issues with Eriksson or Ekman Larsson's contract.
Yeah, the more I look into this one, the more I looked at it in the cap numbers, they're not even really fixing their immediate problem. They're just finding a better use for the same amount of money. Because like Roussel, Beagle, and Eriksson are $12 million, but they all expire after this season. Ekman Larsson, they're going to be paying Vancouver's going to be on the hook for 7.26, and then they still have to sign Connor Garland. So he's not going to get 5 probably, but they're basically going to be paying about the same for the two guys they just got, within $1 million or so. But they've got Ekman Larsson, but they've now going to have that money tied up for even longer because Ekman Larsson still signed for another 7 or 8 years or something, 6 or 7 years, I think. So it's kind of a weird one for me. They're making better use of the money. Don't get me wrong on that, because at least Garland's going to play and be a contributing player in the top 6, and Ekman Larsson's going to be basically there to take over the defense from Edler. But they also gave up a whole bunch of draft picks for that as well, which I don't quite understand. I guess they're getting more value out of the players and the players themselves, but that just seems like a lot, because it's not even like a cap dump like Ladd and Gostisbehere were.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what Garland gets and if he does sign there. I think he will, but I mean, he was on like a league minimum contract before, so he's going to probably want, at least like 2.5 or 3 million or something. So they'll still have I think they might have some savings out of this, but like you said, they're going to have roster players where Eriksson is 6 million. He didn't even play
barely.
Basically, Beagle I think was hurt for a big portion of the season, and him and Roussel are both at 3 million, and so that's $12 million going out, and half of that wasn't even a roster player. So yeah, at least they've got a guy who can play, and if he gets hurt, that's a significant amount of money to put on IR. So yeah, I mean, I think they're looking I think Benning has said he's going to be our number one guy to play a lot of minutes, and I think it really depends if he returns to form, but I really do think that he will do well with a change of scenery, Ekman Larsson, because of all those things we mentioned, and just getting into a bigger market, where there is a lot of Swedes. The Sedins are part of the organization. They're friends with him. There's Pettersson. Almost said Markstrom, but there's a Swedish family, I guess, there. So that should be good for him. And then Garland, I think, will add to their middle 6, scoring, which I think is good for them. I think Garland's kind of going to be like the player that everyone kind of wished Jake Virtanen would have been. Bit of depth scoring. They're going to buy out Virtanen. So look for Bergevin to sign him to a contract. Yeah, I mean, they definitely gave up a lot for this, being the the first round pick, number 9 overall. But they got their guy. I mean, they got him.
Benning only spent an entire calendar year fawning over Oliver Ekman Larsson, so I guess it's fitting they finally got him.
Yeah, I mean, what would they have paid last year for? One more season. But I have to assume that they're not done here, because the rumor is Schmidt is going to be moved, and Edler, I think, is testing for agency.
Edler's moving on. Holtby's either getting bought out or traded as well.
Yeah, and so I think they got to at least move Schmidt and get some sort of stable D-man. Maybe they can make a deal with Seattle to get somebody, because they're gonna need some guys that can just play solid minutes. I think they gotta move somebody out, but I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson, playing under like Tocchet, like more defensive hockey, I think he should do okay. But they really have to get a good partner between him and Quinn Hughes, because I don't think these guys can play together. But I think Ekman-Larsson's more of like a two-way guy than just like strictly offense. But yeah, I mean that D-core is looking kind of weird because they've got Hughes, Ekman-Larsson, they got to sign Hughes first, and then they've got Ekman-Larsson, they've got Schmidt,
got Myers
currently, Tyler Myers,
and then I think there's like Hamanich and Levy.
All those guys need deals.
Yeah, so they don't really have much of a defense right now.
So I don't think they've got anybody who can like quite make the jump, because unless they want to play like Madison Bowie, but I mean, I'm a very vocal non-fan of his, so I hope they don't. But I think they got to do something with Schmidt. I don't know what it is, but maybe they can trade Schmidt for like depth D-men, play them. A guy like Troy Stetcher.
Yeah, I wonder what it would take to get a guy like Troy Stetcher on that team.
Yeah, local guy, it would make a lot of sense. So yeah, anyway, they really got to do some more work. Obviously, they've got Connor Garland to sign, and they've got a lot of other guys to sign too, because basically, if you look at their team, like half their team has expiring contracts, and there's some big names in there like Pedersen and Hughes, and they've got to sign Levy too, which will be cheaper. But with Cale Makar signing like a $9 million deal, what does that mean for Quinn Hughes? Like 7.5, something like that.
Yeah, they're gonna be struggling to fit all of this under the cap this season.
Yeah, so they got to make some magic if they want to be competitive, because they're in a weak division, and they got some huge work to do here. I mean, they signed Jason Dickinson, but again, RFA, or they traded for him, but RFA. So it's like their list of fucking contracts isn't getting any smaller. At least they signed Demko midseason, so they got one of their big three. But yeah, they've got a lot of work to do. So maybe Wednesday onwards there'll be some movement there, but I think it's a team to keep an eye on, because they might get desperate and do something dumb. Now that they've got some extra work to do. So
yeah, well, they basically have to sign half their roster in $20 million, and part of that includes, like you said, Hughes and Pedersen. So
yeah,
that if teams kind of call Vancouver's bluff here for a couple of months and make them wait, they might be able to get stuff for a lot cheaper than if they were to take advantage of that now.
Yeah, I mean, they do have like Podkolzin should be coming in, so like they don't have to re-sign absolutely everybody that was on their roster, but like still they got a lot. So yeah, the good news for them is that their AHL team will be in Abbotsford, so everyone won't be so far away.
Yeah, easier.
So that's a huge positive. Anyway, moving on. We'll talk about that other big D-man trade and signing. Blackhawks acquiring their second Jones bro here. They acquired Seth Jones from the Columbus Blue Jackets and a 2021. They swapped picks where Columbus would move up. A 2021 first and a 2022 sixth, and Columbus got Adam Boquist, a 2021 first, 2021 second, and a 2022 first.
And the condition on that 2022 first heading to Columbus is that if Chicago wins one of the draft lotteries in 2022, that pick moves to 2023. So right. when I saw this trade breaking, when I saw the pieces that were involved, because it took a while for this one to get confirmed. So it started out where it was like Seth Jones for Boquist in a first or something. even at that, I started laughing. Like, why would you give up one of your best young defenders, one of the best young defenders in the league, and a first round draft pick for Seth Jones? Then it came out that he was going to sign like a 8-year. It ended up coming down to like an 8-year, $9.5 million per season extension. We'll wait and see if that's the final terms on that when free agency opens. But it ends up being like Seth Jones trading down 20 picks in the first round and a sixth for like one of the best young defenders in the league. You know, a couple of first round picks and a second round pick. Like, that is just an absurd amount to pay for Seth Jones, and Columbus just made out amazing off of this deal.
Yeah, it really well done for them. Boquist will be great for them, and that contract that Jones signed is just.
I think Chicago at this point is going to be paying like $30 million for Taves, Kane, and Jones.
Yeah, so they basically just got rid of Keith and then just brought in the same problem.
Yeah, they made it like almost twice as bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know, and like he's not exceptional defensively. So
yeah, he had one really, really bad season this past year, and I mean Columbus sucked as a whole, so it's kind of like half and half. Is it him or the team? But they're paying him like he's like a superstar number one like franchise player, because I think the only two defenders going to be making more than him are Drew Doughty and Erik Karlsson at this point. And he is not that good. Like he's good, but he's more where he is now, like $5.5-6 million good.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane money. So yeah, I like that one a lot for Columbus. I like what they did there for sure.
Yeah, they get they get so much in draft picks. And I mean that second round pick they acquired in that trade, they immediately flipped to Carolina to get Jake Bean,
which is awesome.
So yeah, they go and get two of the Adam Boquist is a more offensive guy. He's one of the better offensive defenders prospects coming up and making a name for himself. And Jake Bean's kind of an offensive guy as well. So they go and get so much offensive talent for their blue line. Out of this trade, it sets a new tone for the team. It gives them great young players to start stocking up, and a whole bunch of draft picks out of this to replenish that prospect pool that kind of got depleted a year or two back.
Yeah, they've done a great job of doing that. And for Carolina to lose Nedeljkovic and Bean, it's like,
yeah,
all right,
yeah, exactly.
Good job. I'm glad I don't like Carolina, because if I did, I'd be really sad.
No doubt.
All right, well, next up, Florida Panthers acquired Sam Reinhart from the Buffalo Sabres for goaltending prospect Devin Levi and a 2022 first.
Yeah, so both players involved, it's their signing rights. And the 2022 first, the condition on that is that if it's a top 10 pick, it'll be exchanged for the 2023 first round pick instead. So I kind of like this trade for both teams. I mean, Devin Levi is a goalie prospect. He was pretty good on Canada's junior team last year, the year before. And Florida obviously does not really need a goalie prospect because they have Spencer Knight coming up. And they also have Bobrovsky locked in there for another 6 or 7 years. So kind of expendable from their end. And obviously Sam Reinhart is a solid player. He's a great scorer. He's going to help bolster Florida's offense. And, Florida's kind of starting to hit win now mode, so they're going to be willing to give up that first round draft pick to get these pieces that are going to, really solidify that roster and just give them a little bit more competitive firepower, because they kind of lacked it a bit against Tampa Bay in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I like this one for Florida, and I think actually the Sabres didn't get a whole lot for Sam Reinhart. I know it's just like signing rights, but I think that this will make them want to get a lot for Eichel if they do end up trading him. Like, they got a lot for Ristolainen, and they didn't really get a whole lot for Reinhart, but they still got some good stuff. So, yeah, it's not the worst deal for them, I don't think, but I thought they would have maybe got a little bit more for Reinhart. And then I guess the last trade was one that actually happened today that I didn't even know about until just now. But the Arizona Coyotes acquired Anton Strawman, a defenseman prospect Vladislav Kolyachonok, and a 2024 second-round pick from the Florida Panthers in exchange for a 2023 seventh-round pick. So this one must have come in when we were recording because I didn't hear about this one at all. But, another Coyotes taking on another, aging contract.
There's Florida freeing up their cap space, getting rid of Strawman. This one, I'm amazed they actually got something in return for this one. That Florida did, anyways. Yeah. They got a 7th. That's an improvement. Much better than a future considerations guy.
Yeah, you think if Gostisbehere couldn't even get anything, that Strawman might not. But I guess there's a prospect involved too. So
maybe that could have impacted it. But
could have impacted it. So
here we go.
So yeah, some pretty big names moving around, and I'm looking forward to perhaps more us around.
Yeah, it's not a great week for the players, obviously, because now they have to uproot their lives and head across the continent to new cities. But for us sitting here on our asses talking about it, it's at least content. That wraps things up for this time here on Clappercast. Make sure you rate and review this episode and toss a follow or subscribe our way. For more content, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Clappercast Media or on Twitter at Clappercast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with more hockey talk.